I used to think the quietest job in the world was working the night shift at a petrol station. I was wrong. The quiet is exactly what makes you hear the things you shouldn't. My name is Ryan, and 15 years ago, when I was 19, I worked alone at a small petrol station nearly 10 miles outside town. During the day, it was busy enough, but after midnight the road became almost empty. Most nights I served a handful of truck drivers, the occasional taxi, and people trying to make it home before sunrise. The station sat beside a stretch of road surrounded by fields. There were no houses nearby, only a repair garage that closed before dark. Once the traffic disappeared, the only sounds were the refrigerator humming behind the drinks aisle, the steady buzz of fluorescent lights, and rain tapping against the large front windows. The company had one rule every night worker remembered: if anything feels wrong, lock the doors and call the police. I never thought I'd need to. At around 2:30 a.m., an old Silver Estate car rolled slowly onto the forecourt. The driver didn't fill up. He simply parked beside pump 3 and sat there with the engine running. For nearly 5 minutes, I watched him through the security monitor. Eventually, he stepped out. He was neatly dressed, probably in his 50s, carrying an umbrella despite the rain having almost stopped. When he entered, he smiled politely. "Quiet tonight," he said. "It usually is." He bought nothing except a bottle of water. He paid with cash. Then he looked directly at the CCTV camera above the counter. "You've got quite a few cameras." I laughed awkwardly. "Company policy." He nodded slowly. "Good." Then he left. It should have ended there. Instead, I noticed his car hadn't moved. It was still sitting beneath the lights. The engine was still running. A few minutes later, another vehicle pulled in. A white delivery van. The driver hurried inside, looking anxious. "Can I use your phone?" he asked. "My battery's dead." I handed him the store phone. He dialed, then immediately hung up. "I've got the wrong number." His hands were shaking. He looked through the glass toward the Silver Estate car. "Has that man been inside?" I answered, "Yeah." The color drained from his face. Without another word, he rushed outside, climbed into his van, and drove away so quickly the tires squealed across the wet concrete. I reached for the phone. Before I could dial anyone, the silver car quietly drove away. I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. 3 nights later, the same car returned. Same pump, same man, same smile. This time he bought chewing gum. Nothing else. As he counted his change, he asked, "Do you always work Thursdays?" Something about the question froze me. I lied. "No." He smiled again. "That's probably safer." Then he left. The next morning, I reported the conversations to my manager. He checked the recordings. The cameras had captured everything, except the man's face. Every time he stood beneath a camera, he naturally lowered his umbrella or tilted his head just enough for the footage to miss him. Not once. Every single visit. The police took the report seriously after discovering the Silver Estate car had been driving between several isolated petrol stations across the region over the previous 6 months. Always late at night. Always speaking to staff. Always leaving. No crime had ever been linked to him. Weeks passed without another visit. Life slowly returned to normal. Then detectives contacted me. They had finally identified the owner of the car. He wasn't a wanted killer. He was a former private investigator suffering from severe memory problems. He had been revisiting places connected to an unsolved disappearance he had worked years earlier, quietly comparing CCTV coverage and asking harmless questions in the hope that something would trigger his memory. The case was reopened. New evidence found during that investigation eventually led police to solve the disappearance. I felt relieved, until the lead detective asked me one last question. "Ryan, do you remember the delivery van?" I nodded. "We found him. He wasn't avoiding the man in the silver car. He was avoiding someone parked beyond the edge of your CCTV cameras." They searched the old footage again. For years, nobody had noticed it. At the very edge of one camera's frame, barely visible beyond the forecourt lights, a dark vehicle had been parked there every night the Silver Estate car visited. It never entered the station. It never switched its lights on. And nobody has ever discovered who was inside. Even now, whenever I stop for fuel after midnight, I always look beyond the lights. Because sometimes the safest place isn't under the cameras. It's knowing what they're not showing.